Welcome to another episode of Insights from the Trenches, a series dedicated to helping ADHD couples thrive by empowering couples with insights from ADHD experts and ADHD peers. I'm Alice, your host. Today, we're talking with Elaine and David Taylor-Klaus. They're both master certified coaches, authors, and thought leaders in the ADHD community. Living with ADHD themselves, they bring decades of personal and professional experience to our conversation today on ADHD marriage and partnerships. So grab a cup of coffee and let's thrive together.
Hey, Elaine and David, it's great to see you again, and thank you for joining the podcast. For those who don't know about you, and I think a lot of people knows about you, but just in case, can you share a little bit about yourself and your ADHD journey?
All right. So now my work in the world is as a coach, and my work is reintroducing successful entrepreneurs to their families. So that's how I use my coaching. A lot of what I do in the world came about through my journey with ADHD, and my flavor was ADHD and depression, because why should it be easy, right? So I had fits of awareness of ADHD as a child. My parents thought I was ADHD, never really got it diagnosed or treated. So Elaine, I was 40 when I got diagnosed. How's your memory?
No, you were in your 30s.
In my 30s.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got diagnosed late. And as soon as I started addressing it, there was a time lag in between when I was diagnosed and when I started addressing it, measured in years. As I started addressing it, things in my world became easier, smoother, more fulfilling. I don't want to say more in control, because who's ever in control? But I would say I was more of an active participant in directing my life.
Can I for just a little tweak to my memory of the experience?
Absolutely.
I'm going to say that it's not that there was a lag from diagnosis to addressing it. There was a lag from diagnosis to understanding it well enough to address it effectively.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that there was a lot, and I think this happens for a lot of people with ADHD. You know, if you go to a therapist who doesn't understand ADHD and you think you're treating your ADHD, you're really not.
Right.
Because if they don't understand it and they don't understand executive function, you're just getting another variation of why haven't you tried harder, or why can't you try harder?
Right. And I think that was the tipping point, was moving from trying harder to working with my brain, to working differently. And that was the key.
Yeah. So I think there was a lot of years we tried, but we were spinning our wheels. We were trying really hard just to tread water.
All right. So tell us about you and your journey. I want to hear your version.
My journey was at some point after David was diagnosed, and then our kids, what do I say, like dominoes, one by one were diagnosed. I kind of looked around and said, there's no way he's responsible for all of this neurology. And I went and had myself evaluated. And so in my early 40s, I was diagnosed with both attention and learning challenges, learning issues. And my flavor of ADHD is very different from David. So I had it looked like I had a lot more executive function, because I'd say he's impacted in 6 areas of Tom Brown's framework, and I'm impacted in 4 out of 6, But once I got that diagnosis and the clarity that, oh yeah, I wasn't just an overwhelmed mom. There was a reason I was struggling so much. That gave us a different access point to have conversations about how to begin to collaboratively, how do I manage my ADD? How does he manage his? And how do we work together to manage that third entity in our marriage and in our family, which was, ADHD.
Wow. How long have you guys been married, and when did you start figuring all this out, or at least start figuring it out? There's another path.
Well, we've been married 33 years. Yeah. And I'd say, as I say, we started ineffectively trying to address whatever was in the space with us within a couple of years of our marriage. And I think for a lot of years there was, and I'm embarrassed or sad to say, there was a lot of pathologizing David, making him wrong, him making him wrong, me making him wrong.
Oh yeah, both of us were on that bandwagon.
No,
Yeah.
because we don't understand that executive function is, in those days, no, we didn't understand that executive function challenges were not a moral failure. And so I think we started trying very early, but it was probably 10 years before we actually started realizing that what we were dealing with was not he's broken, but that we've both got things that we really need help with to make this work.
And that's an important piece for the folks out there that resonated with. Culturally, for those folk who don't understand neurodivergence, ADHD is often looked at as a parenting failure or a moral failure in the person who has it. And that stained, I'll just speak for myself, that stained my view of how I was being effective or ineffective in the world. And I had that script running in my head. So it
For your
took a while
life,
to overcome that. Oh, my entire life. Absolutely. I
right?
still wrestle with vestiges of it. It's still in there because it was the script I had from everyone or the society around me for so long.
Right. All kinds of variations of why can't he just, if he would only, not living up to potential, like all of those classic stereotypes and tropes of kids with ADHD become this deeply ingrained part of the psyche and the self-esteem as you become an adult with ADHD. For me, it was different because I didn't have the why can't she just, because I had enough anxiety to compensate for it. And so what my vestiges looked very different from his. It was, I'm not good enough. They're going to find out I'm really stupid. Like I had my own scripts that were different from his.
So tell me the moment that you guys started understanding each other. That
Yesterday? No.
Yes, I was gonna say we're still working on that. I mean, bear in mind we've known each other for 49 years. We've just been married for 33. So it's think new level, new devil. Every time we think we understand each other, there's more to learn. So I don't think either of us. I don't even fully understand myself. So how could I fully understand her? Right? That's always a journey. But I think we learn more as we go.
So that's a lovely philosophical answer.
I'm an
And
Enneagram
I
7.
think the question that you're asking is, when did things start to shift?
Yeah, that's different.
Mhm.
For us, I think a lot of it, there were two things that happened roughly around the same time.
Hmm.
One, we had a nutritional change in the family that was extraordinarily impactful. So the long story short is David and one of our kids went off of gluten.
Years, 7 months
This,
ago.
a dozen years or so into our marriage. And it was dramatic shift. And I do not believe it's a panacea for everybody. I'm not saying everybody should go off gluten, but when gluten is an irritant in your body and you remove it, the change can be quite dramatic. And so for each of them in different ways, the change was quite dramatic. So that was one piece, because I think by removing that irritant, for David, it was like a fog that he had lived in under his whole life lifted, and it made him available to begin to manage the ADHD differently. So that's one thing. Anything you want to add before I move to the other, David?
No, that captures it succinctly. Yeah.
Then the other thing was we discovered coaching. And shortly after the whole gluten thing, like within a year or two, somebody turned me on to a coach, and I started working with a coach and realized this is amazing. And so I went into coaching, and then David went into coaching, and it changed everything about how we accepted ourselves and each other, how we communicated with ourselves and with each other, how we set a tone of the home. To the topic today, it changed a lot about intention for us. And so it was that combination of the two that really transformed our lives and our family life.
Great. Now I'm just going to dig a little backwards a little bit. When you were presenting in Melissa's training, you said one thing that really struck me was, for the first 10 years of your marriage, understanding David's intention to do good was how it helps you through the day.
Mhm.
That really struck me. Can you tell me a little bit of how'd you figure that piece out? Because for a non-ADHD partner, including myself, it took a long time before I realized his intention is never to do bad. My husband has ADHD. His intention is never to do bad. But we didn't understand ADHD, or at least for me, I didn't understand it back then. So I didn't think that he has good intention. So how did you figure out he has good intention
Right,
for
so
that first 10 years?
and please take no offense, I'm going to really challenge your language around good and bad. So that's the first thing.
Mm,
It is not about good and bad. It is not that
mm,
one partner is good and the other partner is bad, or what, like, it is not good to because you have executive function and bad because you don't. So, and
mm.
I get where you're coming from. And
Yes.
I think that my natural come from is a place of
Mhm,
non-judgment.
mhm.
And
Even
my,
before coaching. Yeah.
say it again.
Even before coaching.
Even before coaching, like the way I be in the world is to see people's capacity and empower what I see as fabulous and possible about them. So part of the reason I think I was present to David's intention is because I didn't see it in terms of bad or good. I knew it's not that I thought he wanted to be good. I knew his intention was to be my partner in marriage. And we were very conscious and intentional when we got married about creating a partnership. We took each
Mhm.
other's names before that was a thing.
Yeah. And we spoke
Right?
to the idea of partnership, and that was what we discussed out loud. Now, whether I achieved what we wanted in terms of partnership or not was okay, I did well at it or I didn't do well at it, but the intention was there.
Right.
Mm.
And so
No, that's good.
even before we got married, we knew that what we wanted in a marriage was a partnership. And so I was able to hold that intention because we had articulated it like in writing, even. We had
It's
this
up
thing
on our
called
wall.
writing before we were ever married. So great
Wow.
argument for premarital support, coaching, counseling, whatever. We managed to do it ourselves. I'm not quite sure now in hindsight how
Yeah.
we did that.
Who knows?
Um, but we did. And so when I say I knew his intention it was not to do good, it was to partner with me.
Partner well.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that
That's great.
fundamental collaboration was the piece that I was holding.
And though it's natural to vote on it, and good and bad are just voting language, although that's totally natural, looking at it in terms of what's the outcome you want, how close is it to the outcome, or how far is it from the outcome, having an outcome defined, like what you want this relationship to look like, this partnership, this marriage, knowing what you want it to look like, it's a lot easier to gauge how well you're doing against it rather than is it good or is it bad, right? You
No,
get to
that
choose it.
makes a lot of sense. And I would say we didn't have that conversation when we got married.
Most people don't.
And
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why we have nothing to figure out what are we striving towards, where we are aligning our goals and objectives in a sense to
Right.
understand it. And that's something that we had to learn to do afterwards of what do I want in this relationship. And also at the same time, when you agree society has a certain way of kind of influencing what you think your relationship is. And that's where people get stuck.
I think so. I mean, I think we go into marriages very often, if we're lucky, we find the shared values. We find where we have alignment and we come into a marriage because we both want whatever it is we want. It's often the things. We both want kids. We both want to raise our kids in this particular faith. We want to live in this city. We want to live in the country. Like, but they're all doing things.
Right.
And I think for whatever at this point, I would say, thank you, universe, whatever reason, we also thought in advance about the being things. And part of it was truly because this was the early 90s and I was a really strong feminist. And so being in a partnership with a man for me meant I needed to be clear what that meant for me. Like what I expected from a male partner in my life for an equal relationship. And so now that I think about it, Dee, a lot of it was about equity, right? It was
Meeting each other. Yeah.
each other, that it wasn't, and that there's a joke. So David's the cook in our family. I can burn water.
Not at all.
And so, when we were getting married, people would come to me and say, "Oh, you're marrying David, you're going to have to learn to cook." And I was like, "Why would I do that? He can do the cooking." So there was definitely, again, a philosophical framework of we're coming together to join together to create a partnership, to go through life together. And we're going to complement each other and match each other and support each other. But that was conscious from the beginning.
And luckily, universe, whatever, we did that at the beginning. And, so much of the work we see is couples doing that later in the relationship, which has all the baggage of the years together before that you have to begin to unravel a little bit to focus on, ooh, okay, what do we want to create from here? How do we want to shift? How do we want to create together and design the relationship from there? Just because it wasn't done before. The Irish saying is, well, the best time to plant a tree is 100 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter when you design, it just matters that you do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do understand where you're coming from here. And that really got me thinking, because a lot of couples think that they have complementary skills. And they said, when we get married, it'll be great. And then once they got married and things start not going the way, they forgot about the complementary skills. And then they start bickering on things of how to divide up who is doing what.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little about equality?
Mm.
Right? Because that is so subjective.
Mm.
So how could a couple comes together and have this conversation of what does an equal partnership looks like?
Well, I think we had some sense of it, and then we got married and things
Reality hit.
definitely shifted as I was working or he was working or neither of, like those kinds of things. And in fact, my diagnosis, I think, re-leveled the playing field at some point. Because I remember having a conversation where I don't know what we were talking about, but Dave was like, "That's really hard for me." And I remember looking at you and saying, "Yeah, it's hard for me too." So we've got to figure out how we're going to get this done when it needs to be done, when it's hard for both of us. And part of it was I then had the explanation for why I was so anxious and struggling so hard. And so that actually gave us a much easier jumping off point to be able to do the divide and conquer balance in the marriage.
And to our credit, it wasn't just understanding why it was difficult or why it was anxiety producing. It was also taking a sober assessment of what it was, taking out the judgment, taking out the wishful, magical ADHD thinking, and looking at, oh, well, where are our strengths? Where are the gaps? And being free of attachment to it. That sober assessment's really important.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, right? Judgment-free zone.
Yes.
Because sometimes when you are in a relationship and you are bumping heads, it's hard to get to that place where you become non-judgmental. What type of recommendations you have for couples out there who wants to have a conversation and be non-judgmental so that they can be successful in having that conversation of, here's our strength, how can we work together as a unit and live and be good partners for each other? Oh, sorry, I'm using the word good.
No,
Have a partnership
I'm
that
going
they
to
want.
offer an answer to that and let Elaine go deeper. But I'll tell you, I didn't learn how to play tennis just by picking up a racket, right? I got help, I got lessons, I got taught. And with couples, if you can bring someone in, obviously we would say a coach, to help create a container for those conversations, that's incredibly powerful. Okay?
Yeah, I think so. Here's what came up as I was hearing you say that, Alice. I think in the first 10 years, I trusted that his intention was good, but I was in judgment that the follow through wasn't there. And when I began to understand what was really going on and to understand it deeper, I was able to step out of judgment and into a more compassionate and knowledgeable understanding of what was going on. So education is really, really important. You really have to understand what you're dealing with. And a lot of people think they understand ADHD because they can read the 6 out of 9 criteria or whatever, but really understanding all the different things that make up the way that ADHD manifests for each individual can make a huge difference. The language we use when we teach parents is to ask the question, is it naughty or neurological? It's a little different with adults, but yeah, kind of the same, which is there a neurological explanation for this behavior, or are they really trying to be a jerk? If you can get to, they're actually not trying to be a jerk, they're struggling, then from a place of, oh, they're having a hard time with this, I can access compassion differently, I can access non-judgment, and I can move into problem solving in a way that I can't do if I'm coming from a place of reaction, taking it personally. So to the second part of your question, the question about like what techniques, we had a therapist who gave us it wasn't ABI. It wasn't
assume best intention. It was benefit of the doubt.
benefit of the doubt. Right. It was give each other the benefit of the doubt. Remember that you're on the same team. And when you feel yourself reacting, stop and ask yourself, right? Is this really trying to be difficult, or can we give each other the benefit of the doubt? So that was a really powerful tool for us for a lot of years still. And the other is the kind of flip side of that we teach parents at Impact Parents is Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. Other people's stuff is their stuff. Their behavior is their behavior. And if I can stop making it be about me, it can allow me to be over there with them and support them. And that means you have to create an environment that makes it okay to make mistakes. And that not take it personally when somebody makes a mistake, because people are going to make mistakes. Even without ADHD, I got news. You know?
And that definitely goes to the point of what David is talking about. If it's hard for you, leverage a coach that could help you get into a better mindset and then be able to help you and facilitate that process.
Yeah.
And learn.
I was going to say,
how to do it.
And understanding. I really do think that we don't recognize how important education is in the process of managing ADHD. I think, I don't remember what country, whether it's the UK or somewhere, when a person is diagnosed with diabetes, there's a required 2 days of education before the state system, whatever, helps them learn to medically manage it. And here, when somebody's diagnosed, if they're lucky, besides a prescription, they're going to be handed a website.
Pamphlet. No, I mean, look, with the example that Elaine gave, that person has to relearn the body they have to learn how to navigate it. When we get a diagnosis, we've got to relearn the brain. We got to learn the brain we actually have instead of the one we thought we had. Yeah. And that means learning new skills and techniques.